Now, our speaker tonight is Miss Biswas. I'm sorry, Debjani Biswas. Now, I met Debjani a few years ago when she was a speaker and then later a moderator. And everybody's texting me. Okay, let me just turn this off. When she was a speaker and later moderator for the Women's Business Forum. Quite a powerful woman, powerful speaker, and she had everybody in the audience wrapped. We were watching, we were listening, we were laughing. We were very impressed. But if you go through Debjani's resume, it's quite extensive. She's a woman who wears many hats. She's an engineer, a very good one. She is a speaker. She is an executive. She is an author. She's a mother. She is a daughter, a sister, a friend. And she's an inspiring woman, a very inspiring human being, actually, not just woman, a very inspiring human being. You know, when I was growing up, a lot of powerful women had to be a little more aggressive. You know how it was in the old world, I should call it, where women had to be a little more forceful to be able to go forward. Well, Debjani is different. She has a strong core that's wrapped in gentleness and kindness. And I find that the most inspiring part of her. But you get to know her a little more as we go through this webinar that we have. But briefly, let me go through her resume. It has to be brief because it's quite extensive. Okay, powerful leader, unique background, female engineer, Fortune 50 executive, currently CEO of Co-Achieve. She is an awardee from the Greater Dallas Asian American Chamber of Commerce Journalism Award, Woman of the Year for NAPW, featured regularly in media, ESPN, CBD, iHeartRadio. She has delivered the solutions assessment, keynotes, workshops, her TED Talks on Bridge, Common Ground, and Gender Bias. But You Don't Look Like an Engineer is the other one, and they're all available on YouTube. She's a thought leader, Bridge, Diversity Forum, a champion in diversity. I love her. She's also a change agent. You know, change agents are not, you know, being an agent of change is not easy, but she does very well, and she inspires in the process. There is also a long list of keynote speakerships and media, Dallas Morning News, Dallas Op-Ed, in fact, ESPN, CBS. And then there are testimonials from around the world. Now, part of what we will send you after this webinar is a list of the books, okay, which she will be showing us later on, and Mona Lisa will explain that as well. And also, I will send you a resume. That way you can be impressed together with me. So Miss Debjani Biswas, but I just like to call her Debjani because it just encapsulates this that she is. And we're very, very pleased that she agreed to do this for us tonight. We are very grateful. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rohina. Thank you, all of you, for the way you've set it up. Thank you, Mona Lisa, Laura, Jill, and thank you to all the participants. We were on earlier, you know, we came on about half an hour earlier to try and make sure everything was working. And we were like laughing and joking because, of course, one of us, our video wasn't always working, and we were playing around with all the audios. And then I just thought to myself, you know, I've dressed very formally in the top is all this thing, but if I'm getting up for a drink of water, you will see I have these half sweatpants, grungy sweatpants. So please consider that this is just an informal session. I'm not going to go blah, blah, blah the whole time. I just like to talk for a little bit about some of the thoughts I have about how we navigate the stress that is attendant with this strange set of circumstances that we're in. And my three colleagues who are also in the visuals here will be watching for the chat. So if during the session, there is a formal Q&A at the end, but if during the session you also have some question, you maybe didn't understand something I said, you wanted me to clarify, please do type it in. And that way we make sure that you understand what I'm saying as we go through it. I do request all of you to have something to write with whether it's just a little post-it sheet or whether it's a, if you like to type, then go ahead and type, whether it's a piece of paper, but something, if you're using physical things, a pen, paper, I'll give you just a second to collect something to write with, because I'm going to ask you some questions. Even though I get paid for speaking, I am usually much more of an introvert and reflective. And so I'm a paid extrovert. And so a lot of what I do is taking this post-it piece of paper or something and really thinking about what I'm experiencing. And so I think the first thing I'd like to start with is on a scale of 1 to 10, and I'm asking this question, you can write it down or you can think about it. Before the coronavirus hit, how would you have assessed your well-being before all of this happened? Where 0 or 1 would mean you were really sad and it was a very, very difficult time. And 8 or 9 or 10 means you were on top of the world, things were going extremely well, it was excellent. So on that scale of 1 to 10, please find a number. Yes, fractions are fine. So if you want to say I was a 6.25, that's perfectly okay by me. What was your well-being? What was your sense of happiness and well-being before all this happened? And again, you are the only one that is going to access this information. This is just self-awareness and curiosity, really. And so I'd like you all, hopefully everybody is writing this down. What is that number as it was before the pandemic hit? And now, 3.5, 4 months later, depending on when you started with your lockdown process or shelter in place or stay at home or social distancing, at this moment in time, asking the same question on a scale of 1 to 10, what is that number? So again, I'll give you a second to think about what that number is at this moment. And the reason it's so nice that I'm able to see at least 3 faces during this session is I can see that what I'm saying has been understood because I can see the 3 ladies are writing it down, and that's super helpful for me. So once you've got those 2 numbers, I want you to take the 2 numbers and just kind of look, compare if you have 2 different numbers. And obviously it could be that the numbers are very close to each other, so it's not much different. It could be that how you are now is a little bit higher in terms of happiness or well-being than it was 3 or 4 months ago, or it could be the other way around. And if you feel comfortable sharing that with us in the text box, you can just say same, or so what I'm asking you, the number right now, is it higher? Is it lower? Is it about the same? So is the number now at this moment in time, is it higher? Is it lower? Is it about the same? And I will ask my colleagues to kind of read the chat as I'm going through this. And my guess, my hypothesis is that several of you will say that the number might be lower right now in terms of some anxiety, some stress, so my guess is when I've done this before, when I've asked it in other meetings, many people might say the number is less now than it was 3 or 4 months ago. I just want to validate that with my colleagues. Okay. Is that what you're seeing, all of you?
Yes, slightly lower. So about 95% lower.
Okay. At this moment, I want you to combine this. You may have known this, but I want to talk about an article that I read in the Harvard Business Review about a phenomenon that is sweeping all across the country and even the globe, which is this concept of anticipatory or imminent grief. And what that means is that I have a very close family member in New York City. And for the last few months, you know that New York City has been the epicenter in the US of a lot of the really high number escalating cases, unfortunately tragic deaths. And so there was a period of time when I was waking up every day and I was checking my phone in case there was some bad news. And so that is known as what I call imminent grief, what this article talked about, anticipatory grief. And so what happens is there is this dull level of stress because we're always afraid or often afraid of something that's going to happen. And I should tell you right away, I don't have a degree in psychology and I'm not a mental health professional. I just want to share some common sense things that would perhaps help us as we process. The first step of emotional intelligence is almost always self-awareness. So being aware of the fact that there's this, it's kind of like you have this magnificent view in front of you, but you're in a car and there's this slightly dirty windshield wiper, right? And no matter what you do, the view in front of you, it isn't clean and clear. It's got this dirty windshield feeling to it. And that's my analogy for the thought that we have, that there's this feeling that what might happen. And so when I add to imminent grief, I add this idea of imminent worry. What if? What will happen? This is definitely bringing the entire level of stress to a slightly higher level. So that's my first point, is self-awareness that there might have been, in many cases, a degradation in your overall feeling of well-being due to this imminent grief, imminent worry, anticipation of something bad going to happen. So that's the first point. I would strongly recommend that for a period of a week, depending on your style, some of you like to write and some of you like to maybe think about it, some of you like to type, but I did this exercise myself. For a period of a week, through the day, I was trying to gauge how I was feeling. I was just putting a word to it. So I would walk past, I'm doing much more cooking and cleaning and groceries and all than I did before. I used to fool myself that I'm cooking at home all the time, but I didn't realize how often I was doing takeout or stopping by somewhere, etc. So I'm doing much more cooking. And I observed during that 1 week when I was writing things down that I was just shaming myself. I was going past a dirty sink full of dishes, and I was like, how lazy are you? What a slob are you, Debjani, that you couldn't wash the dishes. And then I was, dropping a little bit of water while I was taking a cup of water. And I was saying to myself, look at you. Why the heck did you? So I was being very harsh on myself. That was one of the ahas. And one of the things that I have done since then is I have tried to be a little kinder to myself. I've started attending a course which is called The Science of Well-Being. If you have not heard about it, it is an absolutely fabulous course. It's offered by Yale. It is free. And I think when I signed up, there was like 3 million people had completed the course. Now it's over 4 million. One of the things they talk about in that course, The Science of Well-Being, is self-compassion. And so every time you find that you're being a little harsh on yourself, I think just allow yourself a little bit of humor. And then this is where I come to the third point, which is bring a little bit of low-level risk and low-level excitement back into your life. You can do it in any creative and fun way that you can. So, for example, it's been months since I've gone to a hair salon, right? And so I just decided I am going to cut my own hair. I don't have shears, so I have a pair of kitchen scissors. And I went to YouTube and I looked it up. I looked up my pal YouTube. I looked it up and I saw that here's how you cut it. And I closed my eyes and I imagined my beauty parlor lady, how she used to lift it up and cut it a certain way. And the moment before I started doing it, I was like, oh my goodness. And I texted my son, I said, here are the scissors, here I am, I'm getting ready to cut my hair. And he sent me a one-line sentence, oh boy, he said. And I thought, what the heck? I may make myself, half bald on one side or maybe like way long or way short. What the heck does it matter? But not that many people are looking at me right now. And the fact is, I cannot tell you what a kick it gave me. I cut it and I don't think it was too terrible. And I was like, hey, I did it. So whatever that it is for you, whether it's, we keep talking about sourdough starters and making your own yeast bread, or whatever it is, planting a few flowers or going out, in the blue, do something that seems a little fun, that is a little bit different, that isn't the same old, same old. Break up your own routine. Do something that is just fun and different. That would be, I guess, my next piece of advice. And then the final piece of it, before, in terms of the advice that I have, when I wrote my second book is called Miserably Successful No More, Power Over Stress. And I interviewed a whole lot of people. And I interviewed a lot of people and I asked them, what are the things that make you stressed out? And, there's an acronym that I use, STRESS, to describe all those items. And the first one had to do with S for style. So in other words, people that worry no matter what. And, I don't see your faces in the audience, but you can text and let me know if you are or are not. I'm talking about myself, right? I grew up with a parent that was always worried. I'm not giving talks about stress because I'm naturally so good at it. It's because I have struggled with this my whole life. And so that's the kind of person that leaves the house and thinks the garage door is open. I left the iron on. I left the stove on, all these things. So if that is your chronic style, try and put some safeguards in place. So for example, my iron has a 5-minute automatic shut off, right? I have little post-it notes on top of the stove asking, did you shut off the stove? So do whatever you can for the safeguards, but then ask one question, which, it's from one of the books that I had researched during writing my book, where there was this person who was possibly going to be condemned to death after a trial. And his lawyer asked him and said, why are you so relaxed? And the person responded by saying, will it help? So in other words, will worrying help? Will worrying about the anticipatory grief? Will worrying that my sink is full of dishes? Or will worrying that, when I cut my hair, I'm going to get a big chunk off here and not so much here? Will it make a huge difference in the larger scheme of life, in the larger picture of the existence that we're in? It is a difficult time, but because it's a difficult time, it doesn't mean it has to be without joy, without fun, without excitement. And then the thing that helps me, I don't know if it helps you, is recognizing when my energy goes up and recognizing when my energy goes down. So as an introvert, borderline, I found that doing too many Zoom or WebEx or video calls, even with friends, even for social reasons, after a while started draining me. So I started saying no to too many things, which were distractions, and focusing on being comfortable with myself. And so that is the other thing, is the joy of self-discovery. Thomas Hardy had this wonderful quote. It's from the book Far from the Madding Crowd. And his quote is, I am never less alone than when alone. And so that's the other thing, is I'm kind of enjoying peacefulness and discovering things about myself. Social distancing is difficult, and yet social distancing is a privilege, because it means that we have homes. It means we have a roof, not a tarpaulin, over our head. It means that we have the physical and financial means to eat separately, not 10 of us in a highly populated area. It means we have the means and power and money to have a laptop or some version of online distance learning. Social distancing itself is a privilege. And so I guess that's what I'd like to end with, is that I know these are very difficult times. And I also know that there is gratitude and there are blessings and there is joy in it as well. And so with that, I'd like to close and open it up for different questions that you may have, or different, any comments, any observations, any questions that you may have before we come to the, the Q&A piece and then the wrapping up.
And just really quickly, I know that you mentioned that the stress acronym is in one of your books. If you could share that book with us, because I know we just got to S, and that way we can see the book.
Mhm.
Maybe
Thank you
everyone else
very
get to
much.
the TRESS part. So
Thank
the
you
whole
very much.
story.
Okay, thank you, Rohina, for having given me a heads up and saying keep your books next to me.
Yes.
This is from Miserably Successful No More. Um, the tagline is power over stress. So thank you so much for asking of that. You know, I'm excited because just before the pandemic hit, we got this. I had gone somewhere and done the recording. And so we have all of the books are in audiobooks as well as ebooks. So I'm pleased because it's easier to reach people now that physical books aren't necessarily being exchanged as easily now in this new world. Thank you for asking.
Well, I'm so glad you have that, because now that we're all sheltering in place, I think everyone's like channeling Marie Kondo and organizing our. I actually,
Yes.
that's what I listen to audiobooks. So I love the fact that it's now available. Yeah,
Oh,
because
yes.
I don't like doing organizing. So
Yeah, yeah. And I tried the Marie Kondo
story
thing.
time right along with it.
Yep, yep. Yes, the audiobook makes it much easier. Oh, excellent. I can see it's opening up with
Yeah,
lots of
figured out we can do. Let me just
excellent.
individually get everybody on here so that
Oh, that's awesome.
and
Very
actually do
nice.
some interacting. I just didn't want to interrupt in the middle of the talk to let you
Oh,
know that
thank you so
we
much.
have found this function.
Nice. Nice
Mhm.
to see so many
So
people.
Debjani, Emily has a question. Is the book in Amazon yet?
Yes, all the books have been on Amazon, I think from 2013. The Audible and all that is just more recent. The ebooks and the physical books have been on Amazon. And the first one, Unleash the Power of Diversity, actually was picked up by Barnes& and Noble as well at the beginning, I think 2013 or something. So Barnes& and Noble, Amazon, Audible, iTunes, pretty much, yeah, I think they're available in all those places. All
Okay.
three. Thank you.
And Jill, you have your question. I believe you should be able to have access to your audio.
Yes, at this point, everyone should have access to their audio. I hope.
Okay.
Yeah, can
Yes.
you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Jill.
Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, you know, I'm an occupational therapist and I've worked with a lot of patients, and fear has been such a great issue. Fear about health, about death. From your standpoint, how should we normalize fear so that we can learn it as a survival trait or a skill during this health crisis?
You know, one of the most powerful things that I have heard, Brene Brown has a daily podcast, which is free. And I listen to that sometimes. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she is one of the grand dams of grief therapy. And David Kessler, I believe, was one of her proteges.
Right.
And we did a 1-hour podcast around grief. And so I would really like you to hear it all. But one of the things that they said that struck me a lot is not trying to bury the grief, but actually acknowledging and naming the feeling that we have, which is that of grief. That was one. And then the other thing is this term that I call sympathetic grief. I have stopped listening to the news because what I have found is that the onslaught of news after a period of 3 or 4 months, it's just creating such a lot of fear and anxiety. So I don't completely, bury my head, like an ostrich. I make sure every morning I read 2 reputable newspapers that I believe. I look at the statistics and numbers. I see the most detailed things. I attend 1 news webcast, but I try to make sure that it's not a 24/7 onslaught of negative news. And then the other thing is, I'm practicing this self-awareness I talked about after that 1 week, is when I feel that pit in my stomach, when I feel my heart thudding, when I feel all those things, I try to name what the fear is about and see how likely it is that that is happening. And there are 100,000 people in the United States that we've lost. There are hundreds and thousands of family members and loved ones of these people that we have lost. So there is a lot of grief, and we would be inhuman if we didn't feel that grief. So I think acknowledging that there is a lot of grief and separating that from the fear of the grief that has not happened yet, or the anticipation of something even worse, I think that is powerful.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I'm curious, as a extremely accomplished person, how do you then, how have you adjusted your expectations of your productivity?
Well, first of all, thank you for calling me extremely accomplished. Some of you know this already, but this whole fantastic next third career started because I got laid off 8 years ago. And, it was so funny because my ego was completely bruised, and then I started writing books. And I bring that up because a lot of times we don't know what productivity is or what we're capable of achieving, because we're sort of in a rut. And so one of the things that happened during the pandemic was I tried to change some of the rules in terms of what success looked like for me. So in other words, because of that comment that I made, I hadn't realized, I was woefully ignorant of how much I was eating outside and getting fast food and stopping at a restaurant, whatever. And when that line got closed and I was actually sitting and cooking and cleaning, I didn't feel comfortable bringing in people to clean for several weeks. So given that my workload was going to increase, I don't think really there's ever this full, complete, perfect work-life balance. Particularly for those of us who are working women, I think we sometimes experience that even more. And so I reset my expectations of what success looked like. And it doesn't look like a 5-course traditional Indian meal every day. That is not success. It doesn't look like me working, an 8-hour day. If I'm doing physical work, it's really important for our well-being to go outdoors where possible. Some of us are in Dallas, Texas, and some of us are all over the place. Weather permitting, we are allowed to go and sit under a tree or find a park and social distance. In order to find time to go out and do that and also eat something reasonably healthy and also not live in like a totally dirty place, something's got to give, right? And it should not be sleep. I cannot overemphasize. Sleep is probably, if we redefine work as being part of our job, part of our work is sleep for 7 or 8 or 9 hours, however many hours you need, because the physical work, the cooking, the cleaning, all these other things that are part of this, and the feelings of loneliness, dealing with that, with watching some, entertainment that makes us better, listening to music, all that has to be fit in. It's kind of like Stephen Covey used to talk about putting in the big rocks first. I was so lucky. I heard Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I heard him speaking 3 times live. And he did this exercise where we had this big container, right? I don't know if some of you have seen it. And he said, put the big rocks in first. And so he had physically big pieces of stone and little pebbles. I consider the big rocks, the definition of success is eating healthy, sleeping well, having some peace of mind, listening to music or going outdoors, being at peace first, and then the physical, professional, the work that we normally consider to be success. I have redefined what success looks like for me on the understanding that a year from now, 6 months from now, when we have the vaccine, when we feel comfortable to reduce social distancing, it's okay. We can give ourselves permission to redefine success again, because otherwise we are going to feel ragged and harried and overworked and overwhelmed. And we shouldn't be so unkind to ourselves.
I'm so glad you mentioned the going outdoors. I think that in the course of these last 2 months that we've all been kind of sheltering in place, I've had several people, family and friends, be really concerned, like, oh, can't they hear that we go on walks every day, and having to invite them to say, no, look at all of our cities are actually recommending this. This is part of how we get through this. Social distancing is very important, but if you don't give yourself moments of feeling sunshine and the wind on your skin, it's because we're human. We need this. And
absolutely, Laura.
And you mentioned that.
You're absolutely correct. And I realize that maybe in our audience we might have half of you have this privilege of being able to go outdoors. I have family members who are in apartments where, you know, the apartment complex, this is in another part of Asia, it's just blocked off. So you're not able to leave the premises. So depending on your circumstances, if you're able to go outdoors and avail of sunshine and see a tree, I know I have started informally, you know, on social media, on Facebook and all. I'd go out when there were bluebonnets in April, and in May when I was in a park, I post some of these little video clips, and several of you have sent me messages saying, you know, that's so helpful. Just you close your eyes and then you open it and you play a little video. There's beautiful things online if you don't have that advantage. And if you get to actually go outdoors and absorb nature and look at trees and look at flowers or listen to birds chirping, but do take the time to do that, because again, that's lucky if we can do that.
Debjani, one of the concerns that I'm hearing from our members, especially those who have small businesses,
Yes.
there is a very real fear of financial ruin.
Yes.
So the vaccine might come, but at that time there might not be anything to salvage.
That's correct.
I mean, you have been you're a CEO of CoAchieve, and I'm sure you understand that.
Yes.
What advice would you give those of us who are struggling with this very real problem right now?
Yes, that is an excellent question, Rohina. And I think it's really interesting that there is no one right answer for this one. So there are circumstances which, if one can avail of social distancing and maintain one's own business and maintain some kind of financial stability, absolutely, you know, it's really important to do as much as one can to help spread the virus to other people who are at risk, to older people, to people who have pre-existing conditions and all these other things. And yet, I've mentioned that I am originally from India. And when I look at some of the pictures, you know, we have a large migrant worker population in India, and a lot of them had day jobs. And so when the day jobs went away, migrant workers were forced not as in by anyone in power, but they themselves felt compelled to try and get to their villages just to make sure they had enough food. And in so doing, they were crammed into buses and trains to try and get hundreds and thousands of miles away to where they lived. Who am I to judge the lack of social distancing for a person that doesn't have access to food unless they go in a group to a place where they can get food? And I use that as an example, Roina, to come back to your example. If I am a small business owner and I have a restaurant, it is so difficult for me to say that I'm just going to close everything down. And so I've heard two things on the news recently. In one of those cases where there was this restaurant owner and he was going through all the reasons why he was not going to open up his restaurant, because he said if somebody falls sick, who gets the coronavirus and believes that they get it while they were eating at my restaurant, then I'm really worried that it could be one of the people who are the cooks or the wait staff. I'll have to close down again. I'm so worried about that. So I've decided only to do curbside delivery and only to do pickup. That same day, I changed the channel and I heard another restaurant owner saying that I am opening completely because I cannot support my wife and my children unless I have a certain amount of money. And so that is the risk that I'm taking. I'm going to take every precaution I can. I'm going to try and do outdoor patio dining. I'm going to make sure I wear a mask, the place is sanitized, we wash our hands over and over again. But I'm going to do this. This is a decision that I have made because otherwise I cannot manage. So my question of all of you is, who's right and who's wrong? Really, we cannot judge. I think it depends on the cost benefit analysis that each of us as small business owners makes in terms of what is our financial blanket. Now, I know several of us are aware of the PPP and are aware of some of the efforts that the government is making to give us, and I believe I read it, don't quote me, I'm not necessarily sure, but I believe I read just recently that instead of 8 weeks, the PPP protection just got extended to 24 weeks. And so I really hope there are measures that will help as a stopgap. I would also suggest to small business owners, this is the time to ask for help. This is the time to reach out to other people. So for example, there are certain services for anonymity. I won't tell you who these people are, but there is a service that I regularly take. And this person reached out to me. This is a small business owner. And they said, I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to pay my basic, bills and basic things. Could you help me in some way? And I bought actually several months worth of cards. And so I also suggest asking for help. And I suggest those people that are able to help, please buy prepaid gift cards, use local businesses, try and give as much of the business, those of us that are lucky enough to be able to do that. And those people that are struggling, please don't feel that it's a sign of weakness. Please reach out, whether it's to organizations like your organization. I know how much you all are doing to try and help. Whether it's, there are multiple, there's Texas Business and Immigration Coalitions, there's so many avenues. So I would say, please continue to reach out and understand that cost benefit analysis is you trying to keep as safe as you can with the very real fear of businesses not being able to survive.
Thank you.
Sure.
And while I'm sure people are already doing it, but I think small businesses, be super vocal on social media and everywhere you can to let us know that you are a local,
Yes.
small business, individually owned, because I think it's easy to kind of get lost in our worry once again.
Yes.
And kind of forget that the community at large may not realize that you're a local small business.
Absolutely.
And we would send business your way if only they knew. So be very visible and very vocal about that so that we know and can support you.
Yes. Excellent point, Laura. Thank you so much. That is an excellent point.
And people don't know to help if they don't know about the opportunity to help you. So thank you for that reminder. And that's just the reminder to ask for help and to reach out to other people. I think more than ever, this is really, this pandemic is really forcing us to stay connected as much as possible in ways that we didn't really pay as much attention to.
You're absolutely right, Mona Lisa. Before all this happened, I was in a flight, and the gentleman who was sitting next to me, I was gathering some data for a more recent book, and I asked him about charity and giving, and he said, the only way to give is you have to give until it hurts. That's what he said. Give until it hurts. And, I've never forgotten him saying that. And if I can encourage, those of us that to give, and it's not just money, it's not just the business. Give until it hurts in the sense of noticing where someone is having a really difficult day. I have several friends, and I know the way that they interact. Laura brought up social media. This is the time to notice if the tone of someone's conversations or posts are, at a level of, feeling really, really negative. My doctor had mentioned earlier that, there are teenagers coming to her with anxiety and depression. This is a time where people really need help. And to the point that both Mona Lisa and Laura made, if we don't know that something's wrong, we need to become more emotion detectives. So in addition to writing down, how we're feeling and self-awareness of ourselves, take a minute to look around and sense if the tone of a family member or a close friend is sort of at that breaking point, is that feeling of being overwhelmed. I've had, and there's no shame in this, I've had someone reaching out to me and saying, are you doing okay? Because apparently my tone was just, really different from how it usually was. And I was not doing okay. It was around Mother's Day. And usually, my son comes to visit, and he was far away. Travel was not possible. My mother is almost 88 years old, living in India on her own, and there's a lot of worry around that as well. And so I was not feeling okay. It was a very difficult Mother's Day for me. And I just felt so sort of like I'm being a grumbling, privileged kind of person to even mention it. So I didn't say anything. Somebody close to me noticed it and said, hey, do you want to, in that same park we mentioned, stay 12 feet apart in our respective folding chairs, sitting under a tree with masks, really safe, far away, but said, hey, do you want to just hang out for half an hour and just chat for a bit? So I think that's the other piece of it, is recognizing that now particularly we're intertwined, we're networked. And if you see something, definitely, it may seem very small to you, but I remember this friend reaching out to me and the difference that literally 30 minutes sitting 12 feet away in different folding chairs and just talking to a person, masked or otherwise, what a difference it made to me.
And to that same point, not just noticing the change of tone, but noticing if someone that is very active on social media disappears.
Yes.
Maybe they're having a hard time reaching out. Not people that post once a month, but the folks that we see that are always on there and suddenly their radio's silent. Maybe there's nothing wrong, but it's worth a phone call, I think.
Absolutely right. Absolutely.
Yeah. And let's face it, especially in the Asian American community, we don't nearly talk enough about our mental health struggles.
Yeah.
There is still a stigma. We're programmed to be strong or to have that, the mask on of resilience. But these are really trying times for everybody, and feeling really strong emotions and different types of emotions. A roller coaster, is it's valid, and every feeling is real. And we thank you for reminding us about being just honest about those feelings, and being okay with asking for help, and being okay with being honest about it.
You mentioned masks, and one of this big aha moments for me when I started writing was my whole life I have worn masks. I was a real people pleaser when I was in my 20s. As a female engineer, I really tried to blend in. It was me and 39 boys in the classroom, and I just, I wanted to blend in. As an Asian, as you mentioned, in North America, I just didn't want to. So one of the things I decided, I had a milestone birthday many years ago, and I decided my give a damn is completely broken. And so I'm just going to, in a nice way, I'm not going to go out and, break the law, do anything like that. But I just mean about small things like this mask. So, asking for help, not wearing a mask. We all wear masks, but it's nice if our mask can be translucent or relatively transparent. And if we could possibly understand, one of my very good friends, Linda, she had mentioned coming back to this idea around the stigma and how we're very hard on ourselves. If we were giving advice to our best friend, what would we tell them to do? And so every time, if we are thinking, oh, this is nothing for myself, then just put in the name of your best friend and say, so-and-so is struggling. Should so-and-so go and seek professional help? Should so-and-so ask for financial help? And it's just easier if you put your best friend's name to be kind to that person, and then say, if I can be kind to my best friend, then I'm going to be with myself from the moment I'm born till the moment I die. Why can't I be kind to myself?
Thank you. We've got time for a couple more questions. Your chance now. Thank you so much for attending. Any other questions while we have Debjani? Okay.
And just so you know, right next to your name on the participants panel, you'll see your microphone.
Thank you, Laura.
So if you click on that, make sure it's not crossed out, because then we can't hear you.
Okay. Good. So we will be sharing some more resources as a follow-up after this session. I'm going to hand it back to Madam Chair for any other chamber announcements. Thank you so much to our speaker tonight for taking the time, for joining us. Happy Friday,
Thank you so much.
for just hanging out and being so open and so generous. Thank you for your kindness.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Debjani.
Thank you, Roina.
That was wonderful. And even in the retelling and the recording of this one, I'm sure we are learning a lot. We're going to gain a lot from what you've shared with us. Okay, I am looking for the, I was hoping that our Miss Mirna Carion would be here, but I don't see her. I think she has a meeting with the sponsor for the.
Hey, this is Gus. Can you hear me?
Oh, Gus, thank you.
Yes.
Hello, Gus.
Hi, we've been listening, but at the same time, on another conference about the June 12th celebration with
Yes.
the CBN people, but, been listening. It's been very interesting. Thank you so much. I can feel for some of those examples that you mentioned. For, my grandkids, for example, two of them came from New York because Broadway was
Oh, my gosh.
shut down. And we happened to be in LA, and they would come and visit us. And normally we would hug and kiss and all of that.
Yeah.
And they were trying to stay away from us, from the
Yeah.
grandparents. And
Yeah.
in the beginning, that was heartbreaking. Of course,
Yes.
we got used to it. They were protecting us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
Heartbreak is right.
LA is a hotbed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This too shall pass.
Yeah, this too shall pass. That's right. That's right. But thank you.
Certainly.
Do you have a book that we can buy?
I actually have 3 books. Okay, I didn't.
Would you mind please share with us?
See, I'm very nervous about showing books because I don't want to come across like I'm trying to sell books in the middle of this. But I shall. Yes, you did ask me. So this is the small book. This is about, I really write about diversity and inclusion.
Wow.
So this is #us2. This is
Us2.
the one that the TED Talks are about that Roina mentioned, Bridging the Global Gender Gap.
Yes.
And then the first book that I wrote, this is called Unleash the Power of Diversity.
Oh, Alex, sounds good. Can you autograph one for us, please?
Actually, I'm happy to. When times are better, I'm very happy to do that. And I think you already saw this one, so I don't have to keep showing the same book over and over again. But yes, it would be my privilege to autograph the book. You know what I'm doing these days during these times when I think they're still physically selling them on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, getting to the houses. I've done this for a few people that have asked me. I actually sign my name and then I print it on like a black and white piece of paper and I mail it to the person's home. And then they just actually stick my autograph. It's a creative way during the coronavirus. They stick it to the book until we can physically meet.
There will come a time when you will be able to physically
Absolutely.
sign our books.
Absolutely. It's so nice of you. It's almost like I have my own personal marketing team. You all like kept asking, show me your books, show me your books.
Yes.
You know what we'll probably
very
do? What we'll probably do, Debjani, is gather up all the books,
Yep.
drop it on your door,
I'm,
and pick it up. Yeah, probably that's what I'll do.
Yes, I'm very, and I'm picking up things from Amazon all the time. So, perfectly okay. We'll figure out a way. We will figure out a way to do something. But in the meantime, this PDF and mailing, I still have some stamps and envelopes. I'm happy to just send off PDFs of my signature here and there.
Okay, let's see. We have a, actually, Gus, if you're still there, can you talk about Kalayaan?
Oh, the Kalayaan
Of
2020.
our Independence Day, Philippine Independence Day.
Sure. Yeah. For I'd say about 35 years annually, we've been holding this celebration right on June 12, which is the anniversary of the Declaration of Philippine Independence against Spain on June 12 of 1898. So, we in the United States, we've been trying to celebrate that occasion. And we've been going to, from city hall to city hall where we raise the Philippine flag. But of course, this year that's impossible. So for the first time, we're doing the virtual celebration of Philippine independence on June 12th of this year. And elaborate preparations, Rowena knows. There will be participation from our community leaders, from our different organizations. There will be speeches, very short, 1 minute speeches about different cultural norms in the Philippines. And then, of course, there will be VIPs like the Consul General who will be also participating virtually. And then after that, ABS-CBN, which is the biggest network, broadcasting network in the United States, that's owned by Filipinos, will be partnering with us. So it's going to be for 1.5 hours. The first hour will be our community, and the other 30 minutes will be ABS-CBN. And ABS-CBN they have millions of viewers all over the world. So they just confirmed that our program will be video stream, live stream to at least their followers in the United States, and that could be 50,000 people. So we're very proud of what we're doing right now, and you're invited, by the way. We will let you know how to participate. It's going to be on Zoom. And it's going to be on Facebook. ABS-CBN, which is the network. They have 1 million followers. So I don't know how many will zoom in or will participate, but this is going to be an experience of a lifetime. We've never done anything like this before. Okay, Rowena, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gus. All right, Mona Lisa, we're
Well,
back.
thank you. Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to gather, even if it is online. We try to find ways to still stay connected with our members, our friends. We thank our speaker for tonight for giving of her time. Debjani, thank you, thank you, thank you. Round of applause to you. And we will be in touch. We are recording this. We hope to be able to share it with the rest of our members who couldn't join us tonight. And then we will just keep proceeding. We will move forward. Simple steps. Everyone, please stay safe, stay healthy. You are not alone. We are here for you. And we thank you for making the time tonight to join us. So on behalf of the Education Committee of our chamber, we really do appreciate all the insight that you've shared with us.
Thank you so much.
Everyone.
So much to the audience. Thank you for participating so actively via the chat, asking questions. Thank you all so much. And thank you to the three of you for helping organize it.
Thank you.
Much for joining us. And if you guys look at your emails, you'll see links to every which way that you can get more information on Debjani's wonderful work.
Still the marketing team at work.
Yeah. Watch our page, our group page. And by the way, if you have businesses that need to be promoted as well, send us the information. We will feature your business in our page. And reach out to us if there's any other thing that we can do for our members and for the community.
Yes.
For everyone, thank you.
Yes, be kind to yourselves. Take care.